says, I wish I was an octopus? Is that prior?
I think that's
That sounds like a prior thing to say.
Right?
Wait, no, but I think it's Roy when he's dying.
I thought it was prior when he was dying.
No, it's Roy. It's Roy.
Roy says, I wish I was an octopus. It's the last thing he says.
It's the last thing he says. Next time around, I don't want to be a man. I want to be an
that's right.
octopus. Remember that, okay? A fucking hold.
Thank you.
Hey, Ivy.
Yes.
Welcome to T10 Theology. My name is Taylor Wilkie.
I didn't even put my headphones on.
It's too late. Surprise.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you saw that we were talking.
It
right?
was.
We were talking
like,
about it, and I'm like, that's it. We're not wasting.
I wish I was an octopus line.
We're not wasting any more content on just whispering to each other out into our phones.
I was into a book. Thank you very much. A real paper one.
Yeah, well, Ivy, just because it's on an iPad doesn't mean it's a real book.
It's not on an iPad.
Really? I don't know. It looks like an iPad to me, okay?
This is literally.
I make no claims.
See? Here it is. See?
I feel like all Taylor's really learned this entire season is that I'm very gullible, which somehow he didn't pick up in the last 8 seasons, and I'm not loving it.
The thing is that previous to the last 2 seasons, Ivy would take an interview, and then I would take an interview. And we would switch off, and we would be one-on-one with our interviewee.
Yes.
For the last 2 seasons, we have been tag teaming the interviews. So now I get to interact with Ivy and make her feel uncomfortable about everything.
Well, this is great news. I was worried you had become a merged mind, and I'm now convinced that you are still 2 minds who know each other's inner thoughts better than you maybe otherwise would, but are still nonetheless 2 distinct minds.
My favorite moment of interacting with Ivy outside of the podcast was the one time I went to a zoning board meeting, and I learned that Ivy doesn't know how to use a microphone there either.
Anyway, no.
Do you live in the same?
Yes.
Yeah, we both live in Cranston. I'm on the Cranston zoning board. It's a lot. There's a lot of paperwork. You own nothing.
My partner's a town planner, so you know.
Oh, that's so cool. There's a lot of places hiring town planners right now.
They are like organ tuners. There can never be enough of them.
Really, yeah. They really are. But yes, so we're talking about Angels in America, a gay fantasia on national themes. Part 1, Millennium Approaches. Part 2, I think it's pronounced Perestroika. So I'm going to go with that.
That sounds right. I listened to this.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's how they said it.
Perfect. First thoughts, feelings. How did we all like it?
I loved this work. I really did. I have a long commute to work, so I just listened to this on the way, and it was just nice to get in the car and just have like a nice listen. Sometimes it was heavy. Sometimes I couldn't listen to it on the way in or the way home. Like I'd have a hard day. I'm like, nope, can't listen to that. Got to listen to my Star Trek podcast. Before the recording started, we all found out that we have consumed different versions of this.
Yes.
I listened to a theatrical recording of it with Nathan Lane and Andrew Garfield,
which is the 2018 London production, if you want to look it up.
But as I was listening to it, I could see how Al Pacino would be a great Roy, who I didn't know is a real person.
Yeah, and they even had to put in the printed version, it says,
Roy the lawyer was a real person.
Yeah, because he was mentioned in something else I was watching recently.
Okay, this is in the printed version, which is what I did. They have an asterisk after Roy's name that says, the character Roy is based on the late Roy M. Cohn, who was all too real for the most part. The acts attributed to the character Roy, such as his illegal conferences with Judge Kaufman during the trial of Ethel Rosenberg, are to be found in the historical records. But this Roy is a work of dramatic fiction. His words are my invention, and liberties have been taken. And some lawyer definitely wrote that.
Imagine being so powerful that you can sue from beyond the grave.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that can sue from beyond the grave.
Well, especially if you have...
Walt Disney.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you have created an empire out of your power and your family name continues to hold significance and power after your death, then people can sue with your name on your behalf after you have died.
And usually it's to, like, protect a legacy and, like, keep certain characters and that. It gets a little trickier when it's, like, a real human, but
That's fascinating. Yeah. At multiple points while I was watching, because I watched Angels of America with Joe Pacino. Was it? No, Al Pacino.
Yes, Joe Pacino.
Al Pacino.
Famous actor.
Al Pacino. And Meryl Streep and others. And had started a book called Empire of Pain, which is about the opioid crisis epidemic. And similarly deals with themes of power and disease and justification of means to certain ends. And so it was just, it's a fantastic book. Really recommend it. And talking about how Roy is actually a real character reminded me of this book. A real deep look at the family empire that built, in many ways, the argument is built the foundations of what became the opioid epidemic in America. So fascinating overlaps there.
Also fascinating overlaps with our current political climate.
Agreed.
I had to double check when this was written. Because,
yes. I know. Oh my. I love this play. I'm sorry. I read it for the first time when I was in college, my freshman year, and it's genuinely one of my favorite ones. And it is so amazing how well it stands.
Oh, yeah.
Up to time, yeah.
I love things that hold up over time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this will definitely be a media that gets adapted many more times.
I hope we see some current or contemporary adaptations. I would love to see, a local theater company put this on and tangle with these, tussle with these themes.
The Game did this like a season ago.
Really?
Yes. And if you like
but Kay's from the East Bay.
Yes.
So she can't.
I'm so sorry.
She can't come. Like legally, she's like
legally,
permitted. She's prohibited from coming.
Come over here
to the West Bay. Like I'm not even allowed to say what music room we're in what church because Kay might be taken away.
I'm sorry, but I would say on a different note, if you liked this, I would highly recommend reading The Inheritance by Matthew Lopez. They speak a lot to each other, and that's a play that came out in like 2020, 2019. And it deals a lot. The idea is like, what is the inheritance of current gay men from the AIDS epidemic? What have they inherited of queer culture? That's like the central theme of that, which this play sort of sets the stage of.
Yeah.
And on queerness, they, them, K, pronoun check, but just for the people listening.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
And now I'm gonna air Fleabag after this one, so that if just in case we did make the mistake, we'll just look like jerks.
No, you didn't. You didn't.
I know.
You didn't. And it's not a mistake. It's just it's all iterative.
Yes. You didn't
like
know.
Gender. It's gender and sexuality. It's all iterative.
Yes. So let's jump right in. Do we want to talk a little bit about the characters that we loved first before we get into like the serious questions of the turmoil of the world?
Oh, absolutely. I absolutely loved Roy Cohn.
Really?
Oh my God, he is such a monster, and it is like so like it is so delicious to like watch this man just be like the absolute biggest asshole in the world.
The unabashed asshole.
Like I have the power, I have the might. There is nothing you can do to stop me from getting what I want. I love that, and he's trying to teach this young man like how to be this shark in like he sees himself as in the world, and this young man is just like, I don't think I want to be a shark like you are. And he's like, what do you mean? You don't want all of everything that I have. Yeah. But also I love Nathan Lane, and that's the version I listen to.
Their last moment together, I know that I just said I wasn't going to talk about this, but that's a lie. And I'm trying to find the stage directions because
with Joe and Roy.
With Joe and Roy.
Where Roy calls out for his mother.
No, he says, teach me what the world has shown you. And then they like have this really like beautiful kiss. Which is funny because then they had just been like, did you sleep with Roy? And he was like, no, I didn't do that. Oh, here it is. Roy says gently, show me a little of what you've learned, baby Joe, out in the world. And then the stage direction, because I always love stage directions, is they kiss intimate, uncertain, as affectionate as it is sexual. And then he ascends. And what I think is, this is not in any of my notes, I'm so sorry. But what I think is interesting of this scene is it kind of reminds me of when Jesus shows himself to his disciples before he ascends and has that very sweet moment with them. And this is kind of a bastardized version of that.
Oh, and Belize. Belize is also
Belize is perfect.
My second favorite character in this.
Yes.
Actually, probably my first favorite. Roy Cohn, I can't say is a favorite. He's just so deliciously evil. It's just
it's fun to see deliciously evil people in
literature.
In literature, not in our real world.
That's why I like the James Bond films. I love villains who don't see themselves as villains in their own story. Like Roy Cohn does not see himself as a villain in his own story. He is the hero of his own story.
What about you? Any favorites?
I am still thinking about the stage direction, the kiss. Because it's interesting that for you, Ivy, what came up was the appearances of Jesus to his disciples, these post-resurrection encounters. What came up for me was the kiss with Judas.
Oh yeah,
We're lovers,
both right. Yeah,
lovers, yeah. And there's this really beautiful setting. I feel like it's Judas and the lynching tree or something like this. It's a musical setting of Jesus in his kind of descent into the underworld, into hell. He actually gathers up Judas's soul and rises with him. And this act of great love, this love that knows no bounds. And, that love changes forms, as we talked about in our other episode. But that kiss that holds so much, that's what came up for me when I was thinking about that moment with them. We're both right.
And we both get to
We're
be
both right.
We're both right. I also love that sort of reading of it. I will say, I think for me, the more Judas character of the show is probably Lewis. I think I forgot how much I disliked Lewis as a character.
Oh my god, I hated Lewis.
And then rereading it, I was oh babe, you are kind of the worst. But then he still gets to be in the epilogue, and I'm like, oh, good for you.
Yeah.
He still gets to be a friend. But he also doesn't get Pryor back.
I love that Pryor says that he loves him and that he can never come back.
Yeah.
And that love sometimes means accepting that you cannot return to the form of the love that you knew, that no longer exists, that the love has to go somewhere else. It has to be something different. I don't think we get to see that rejection and affection live so closely together very often in media, or maybe in books more, because you can thread through the nuance, but not often in media.
The ways I most see it come up in life and in media is in queer stories.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a purely queer type of love, but I do think that is the space I most see, where two people have broken up but then have still stayed very, very close and very, very friends. And just friends, that's all they are. And still having that love.
Yeah. I loved Pryor because he's so grumpy so much of the time, and also open to change in himself and his relationships. I appreciate that so much in him, and not only in his own experience with AIDS and just dying. I mean, he really begins to accept that he's dying at a certain point. And then has this phenomenal dialogue, on long-term dialogue with this angel, and then essentially refuses to let the angel go until he receives his blessing. And the blessing for him is to return to the gritty mess of life, is to live. Knowing the pain and the death and the loss and the risk that is inclusive of choosing life. He refuses to be let go until he is blessed to live. Like, bless me anyway is that line. And I just think that's fantastic. I and so brave, and so the opposite of what the hot priest does in Fleabag. He accepts life in all of its fullness by the end. Only after, I think at certain points in the arc of the story, he does want to die. He is done. He is done. And comes to that clinging on to life as it is. That's a hard one, yes, to life.
Yes.
So I love Pryor.
It's kind of like the idea of no matter how much you want to quit, sometimes God has more for you to do and you just have to do it.
Yeah, or like you get to choose, you know, like the ladder, the fiery ladder, the angel, you know, offers this fiery ladder down, Jacob's ladder, if you will, like all this ladder imagery. The ladder comes down into the hospital room and he has to ascend it. It's not like she pushes him up the ladder, nor does the angel or the panel of angels, which also was very interesting. Like how whatever heaven is in this show is a really, and in the book is really fascinating. Love to talk about that. But just as the ladder comes down and he has to ascend it, he also, his hospital bed appears in the waters and he has to go back to it. He has to choose to return. So yeah, like God is a God of consent.
Yes.
Very reminiscent of the series finale of Quantum Leap that we talked about with who's this guy that we talked to? Oh yeah, the bishop.
Yeah.
I also love his friendship that ends up happening with Hannah.
I was going to say that. Yes.
Yeah.
Because like she starts wild. Like her introduction is not an introduction I feel like you give a character you want people to really like.
It's an unsavory introduction to a person.
She doesn't lose herself in any way, but she definitely, I think, grows in different ways. And like their relationship, I think, is very sweet.
I did find that storyline hard to follow. Because like they kept cutting back to this person who was selling her house, and I'm like,
the house is gone.
Who even is this person? And then it turns out that she's Joe's
mother.
Joe's mom, who comes to New York to look for Harper, right? That's the. But why did she sell her house though to come to New York to look for Harper?
I never understood why she needed to sell her house, except for the fact that I think she wasn't actually really here for Harper. I think that Harper was a byproduct of her being there. I think she was really there to save her son's soul. And I think for her, she needed to cut all ties to return safely back to do that. I have no real facts to validate that besides what I am reading into it. And what I think is interesting about it is she is sort of introduced to us as the most religious and heavenly character in a lot of ways. Like she like really...
You're the most devout.
Yeah, she really believes in it. But then when Pryor's like, no, I've really seen an angel, she's like, sure, sweetie. Like, that's very nice for you. Which is very funny because then she like doesn't actually believe it. But that's why I think she sells her house.
Well, isn't that kind of how we all would be?
I don't know.
I
I feel like I would have the same reaction.
Like,
I don't know if I'm the most...
You're the prophet. I get it. Whatever. I mean...
You're the priest. Maybe you would believe people.
I don't know.
Easier.
I loved that scene where the angel returns and he's, Pryor is telling Hannah, the angel is coming. The angel is coming. And this is like a really strange creature that's about to descend and get ready. And she's like, okay, maybe, probably not, okay. But she has some faith, so she's not totally closed off to the possibility. And then like the ceiling flies off and the angel is descending and she's screaming and Pryor is looking at Hannah and going, are you seeing that? She's just like crazily responding to this phenomena of the angel, but they get to experience it together. I think that's such a fantastic bonding moment where they both are in one way or another having an encounter with the divine that both inherently mysterious to both of them and also undeniably real and transformative.
So there's a lot of suffering and abandonment, political turmoil. What do we sort of think keeps the characters moving through this world? And do we think that is faith, or is that just survival? And what's the difference?
I mean, just keep swimming. That's what I say a lot when I feel like I am like overwhelmed. I'm at work and I'm like, okay, like, or in life or whatever. I'm just like, just keep swimming. Just put your head down and just keep swimming.
Yes, but like it could be worse. So just gotta get through it.
Yeah. Well, Harper's not Harper. Why do I keep wanting to talk about Harper? This is interesting. Maybe it's because Harper asked some interesting questions about what it means to pray and like what it means to believe in something. And Pryor also asked some of these questions, and he asks them mostly to Hannah, as maybe the person in the play who is cast as most devout, and Hannah as played by Meryl Streep in the version that I watched. That would
have been wonderful.
Yes, when Pryor asks Hannah what essentially like angels are, she says angels are beliefs with wings and arms, who are also, at least as imagined in this narrative, often in motion, in movement. And so then Pryor returns to this idea while he is looking at this panel of the angels, who are also all of these characters in America, right? They're the same people. Belize and Hannah and Lewis, they're all angels in this heavenly space in the finale of the show, or the ending chapters of the book. And so he, in his monologue, says, we can't just stop moving. And I think in saying that is saying something like, we are designed to live, to be in motion, to be angels to each other. Because I think maybe that's part of what I took away as one of the revelations of the show or of the story, is that there are angels in America everywhere. And often it is the divine spark working in each person, especially the people that you least expect to see that in, like these surprising angels. And I think Joe in the show might be, I mean, they each are surprising angels, but Joe's arc as a character, he really breaks open at some point and is still an unsteady angel, if you will. But I think in his encounter with Lewis, who's a really difficult character, I think in the narrative, he really tries to remind Lewis of what is real, and I think acts as some kind of an angel figure to him, even as he kind of maybe abandons Harper. And they maybe co-abandon each other. But anyway, all to say, I think this idea of angels being beliefs with wings and arms and shape and being makes me wonder, like what angels are for, and if we all actually are kind of angels to each other, what then heaven is like what is heaven like if these angelic encounters continue even as they change form in the afterlife. So
I think I subscribe to this idea that God puts people in your way. God puts the people in your way who you need to be in your way at the moment they need to be in your way. I remember during the vid during the vid they showed like a early on to teach everyone like how sick works. They showed like this dots, right? And they're like, okay, well here's a dot, and this is a red dot, and like all the blue dots are the red dot's sick and all the blue dots aren't sick, and we're gonna bounce it around this graph, and every time the red dot bounces into a blue dot, it turns red. And then like, and then to show social distancing works, they put like little blocks around and they stop them from bouncing into each other. Anyway, that's what I think God is doing. God, like, we're all just dots and we're all just being like pushed around a board, and he's like, these two dots need to meet, and he just kind of like nudges. He doesn't move us together. He like nudges us towards each other. And whenever you're in a sad, low place, or in like a place where you really need somebody and you're alone, I think God God puts somebody in your way, and if you're listening and you're looking, you'll see them. You'll see them for the angel they are.
To that end, what do we think about the relationship between Lewis and Belize?
Love it.
Oh my God!
Because
they're such great frenemies.
Yes,
they are
because
such
in the
great
end,
frenemies.
they're both portrayed on this panel of angels.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So what do we think of their friendship and their conversations about America? Because Lewis really believes in democracy and a vision of America that Belize does not get to live in as a queer Black man. So they have this interesting dialogue around Belize saying, you can love America, but I live in America. Mm-hmm. I'll show you America. And then Lewis being maybe hell-bent on America living up to its better angels. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, what do we think about their exchanges?
I think the one thing I do love about them is that Belize never writes Lewis off.
Belize never writes anyone off.
Like, I think the most fascinating thing about Lewis and Belize is that we have as many one-on-one conversations between the two of them as we do. Watching it, how I interact with my friends and all that kind of stuff, I just think, like, if one of my friends was prior and their ex abandoned them at a hospital with them actively dying, I don't know if I would have the same level of grace to like keep meeting that person, to like have conversations with them, and conversations where they're like kind of awful sometimes in them too. And I think that is actually what I love most about their interactions and their conversations, that Belize is still willing to go and have those conversations, even though I think they know at a certain level that those conversations are harmful to them too.
Belize understands the baptismal covenant.
Yeah.
Belize never abandons the dignity of any person. Mm-hmm. And that is true with Roy, and that is true with Lewis, and I mean comes more easily, I think, with Pryor. But he retains each person's dignity and humanity. And I think you're right, Ivy. Their conversations, the conversations we get to see between Belize and Lewis demonstrate what friendship can hold and what queer community can hold, and also I think what dialogue, sincere dialogue with people with whom you might vehemently disagree can look like, because they do, that they both say cutting things to each other and still return to the relationship and maintain their commitment to the broader work, whatever that is. And in this case, the broader work in many ways is mourning the loss of their friends and their community and supporting the life of the people in their community with whatever allies appear. And Hannah, an unexpected ally.
Unexpected ally.
Unexpected ally.
We love them.
And maybe Joe also a little bit. Is Joe an ally? What's Joe?
Joe's trying to find himself.
Joe's finding himself. Harper's on
Joe
a plane.
doesn't know what's going on.
Joe's out.
Joe's
here
crashing
trying. Oh man, I do kind of pity Joe.
I do too.
And it is pity.
It's so overwhelming. It's so overwhelming to be a person sometimes, and Joe's just really in the muck of that.
Did you have something you wanted to say about Lewis and Belize?
No, I don't. I think you guys said it very well.
Nice.
I'm working on no notes, guys. Like I listen to this. I listen to this in the car on my way to work. So there was no opportunity.
You were in and out of consciousness.
There was no opportunity for me to write anything down. But like I remember things that I liked about it.
Okay, what about the moment when Roy is dying? And he starts seeing Hannah in the form of one of his relatives?
No, Ethel. He sees Ethel. It's just played by
the
Meryl.
same character.
Yes.
So this is why it's really interesting to watch this, because Meryl Streep plays Ethel
and
also plays Hannah. And so it's very like, who's Mary in the New Testament? Are all the Marys the same? Are Mary Magdalene and, Mary of Bethany, and are they all the same Marys? This is the experience I was having with Meryl Streep. Are Ethel and Hannah, are they all the same in life after death? Like, who knows? Anyways, but at the end, when Roy is dying and is seeing Ethel, who has some things to say to him about her grievances, we also have in that moment Lewis.
Yes.
Lewis and Belize. And Belize asks Lewis essentially to say a prayer of blessing because Roy is also Jewish. And I think, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because Ethel, yeah. And Lewis is like, I am less Jewish. I am barely Jewish. Like, I'm not practicing. I do not have the tools to do this. Absolutely not. And then he puts a little funny napkin on his head and is just like, okay, I'm going to offer everything that I can to this experience, even though I feel totally unprepared. And then Ethel guides him through the prayer.
Holy Spirit.
Holy Spirit,
up.
Holy Spirit. And then he has this kind of insane experience of, channeling the Holy Spirit through this prayer with ancestor Ethel present, who is also choosing to show up as an angel for Roy in that moment, even though she has some major issues with him.
Which she was an angel, because the fact that she is still there after Roy dies, it means she's not an hallucination.
No.
She is actually there.
She's there.
She's absolutely there. And then Belize says after this experience, Belize goes, you did just fine. You did just fine, Lewis. And Lewis goes, just fine. That was miraculous. That was miraculous. And I don't know, that encounter with all of those characters that are maybe be unexpected angels to each other.
But I think even before that, what is amazing is that Lewis is like, I'm not praying for him.
Yeah.
He's like, he is a terrible person.
Yes.
Why would you do it? And I do love when he's like, I can't believe you'd actually pray for it. And Belize is like, I'd even pray for you. And I was like, I know Lewis isn't great, but I don't know if he's the same level as awful. But what Belize says in it is, Lewis said, even pray for you. He was a terrible person. He died a hard death. So maybe a queen can forgive her vanquished foe. It isn't easy. It doesn't count if it isn't easy. It's the hardest thing, forgiveness, which is maybe where love and justice finally meet. Peace at last, isn't that what the Kadash asks for? And that is how we get that moment with all four of them. Is again, Belize being the only adult in the room and being like, we all need to just be nice to each other.
Belize is as regulated as possible at all points. Just integrated human being. Yeah, I mean, wow, there's so many things to pick up on in that paragraph.
I can hear it. I can hear the narration in my head while you read that.
Yeah. No, I love that whole scene of him being like, I don't want to do this, and him being like, we still need to because that's the right thing to do. And I do wonder, and I know you're like a baby or priest.
9 months.
Anyway. But I do wonder, what does it...
You're doing great.
You're doing great. It's a very different type of calling to sit with someone in that space, either right before their death or after death, and giving those sorts of prayers than some of the other types of prayers you might interact and see in their life.
Yeah, witnessing people in their messiest, most vulnerable moments, one of the holiest things I think anyone gets to do. And caretakers of any kind know that well. And priests get to be a part of those moments. And often when I have been at someone's side as they were dying, or with family members as they are witnessing someone they love suffer, which I think in some ways can be harder than being with family as they are witnessing someone die, because the suffering is so painful. And as the story describes, AIDS was a painful death. It's a painful death, and Roy's especially. I have often found that in those kind of holy, tender moments where everything is on the table, and our humanity and our mortality and our mess is laid so bare, that often is the moment in that space where miracles like, praying the Kadesh with your ancestors happen. Where like you don't think that you have anything you could possibly say. Those are the moments beyond words, beyond what we might think prayer can do. I think some of the most honest prayers of my life have happened in moments of unvarnished suffering and real death. And I just feel really fortunate to get to be so close to people in those moments. And I think we're lucky in the Episcopal Church to have the Book of Common Prayer, to have like prayers that are there to hold those wordless moments. We're not the only tradition that has those things, right? The Kadesh in the show and in the book is serving that kind of purpose. Like the liturgy is doing the work. The prayers are doing the work of saying the things out loud so that the body and the soul can catch up to the reality of the moment. But I just really value the honesty of the conversations that we can have with each other and with God when there's really nothing left. There's no way to make the situation other than it is.
I think that kind of leads us into another sort of central theme of the play, which is the suggestion about God's silence during crisis. And is that silent absence? Is it a challenge? What is that silence? Or is it silent? Because we do see the angel.
Oh, I don't think there is. God puts us and shows you exactly where you need to be when you need to be there. Whether you know it or not. Always. Like, especially in these trying times that we're in now. If you feel moved to go somewhere, go there. There's a reason. And I think if you think God is being silent in a time of crisis, you are not open enough to hear what he is saying to you.
Or you're listening the wrong way.
But what do you know? We're just lay people. What do you think a priest has to say?
I don't know.
I agree that silence and absence are not the same thing. So, there's a lot of scriptural precedent for God's perceived silence, like humans perceiving God as silent. And then we conflate, often as humans, God's silence with God's absence. Because it's really difficult to believe that God could be present and silent at the same time. And I think God sometimes is silent verbally, but not absent. Some witness doesn't require words. And the thing that's coming up for me right now is prior with his book, the book that the angel shows him, that he then returns at the end.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't want this book.
Sorry, what was with the book? Not to take us off the rails.
It's because he's a prophet.
It's like, is it the book of with the 7 seals of Revelation? Like, I have no idea what this book is.
I thought it was like how doesn't Elijah?
Or the book of heaven, with the names of heaven written in them.
Yeah, like I didn't understand.
He doesn't want to be responsible for this book.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to be God.
You don't have to look it up.
That's what I have no idea. But he returns the book.
Okay, yes.
One of the things that I wonder about is prior in that monologue that he's giving to the panel of angels. One of the things he says in the monologue is he's like, God's not coming back. And if God were to come back, sue the bastard. Sue God for abandoning God's people, essentially, in this horrible time. And then he returns the book. And he returns to earth with his blessing. With his blessing to live. Bless me anyway. And I think prior at that moment begins to understand that God is not up in heaven. God is in each of the people in his life, like in life. God is not something to wait for in heaven. But instead, God is to be experienced in our lives. And it reminded me of, the vision of new heaven and new earth. It's not that we are going to go up to heaven and God wants us to remain up in this heavenly realm. The desire for the new creation is that heaven would come to earth. that's the kingdom. That's like the promise. And so I think as far as this question of like, is God silent in crisis or is God absent? I think no, but I think we miss God all the time. We miss God or we misperceive God all the time, especially in crisis.
I also like in that scene with Pryor, he asks them to sort of take this plague away. That's his first request before the blessing.
And they say they don't know how.
And they say, we suffer with you.
We suffer with you, yes.
But we do not know how. We do not know how to sort of take this away. And then also what Pryor says after he gets his blessing and right before he returns is, you haven't seen what's to come. You've only seen what you're afraid is coming. Until it arrives, please don't be offended, but all you can see is fear. I'm leaving heaven to you now. I'll take my illness with me, and I'll take my death with me too. The earth's my home, and I want to go home. I mean, he's grumpy, but he really does have some great lines.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes. Prophetic, yes.
Love him. And I think that's very interesting of like, you actually don't see what's coming. You can only fear what you think will. Because also, whatever you think is coming, it will either be worse or better. Like, you cannot actually, none of us actually see the future. Mm-hmm. Somewhat pain.
This question of God's absence and silence and not knowing the future makes me wonder about what you think each of these characters perceive to be justice, and whether the play ends with a vision of God's justice. What is justice to these characters, and what is the most just thing in crisis? Because in that paragraph with Roy's death, right, they say something about, what is it? Peace and love and forgiveness? And that's justice or something?
Oh, what Belize said about the prayer.
Belize, yeah.
A queen can forgive her vanquished foe. It isn't easy, it doesn't count if it isn't easy. It's the hardest thing, forgiveness, which is maybe where love and justice finally meet.
Yeah, I just wonder if that's true. If forgiveness is where love and justice finally meet, do we get an image of that justice in this narrative?
I think what's also interesting is that through most of the play, except for maybe Roy and Pryor, they're looking for forgiveness in the wrong place. I say Roy because he was not looking for anyone's forgiveness. But I think what is fascinating about the journey that Joe and Lewis go on is that they're looking to each other to forgive them for the sins they feel in themselves. And then they're looking to Harper and Pryor to forgive them for their perceived sins. But really, at the end, the only people that need to forgive either of them is themselves. Joe has to forgive himself for being who he is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Lewis has to forgive himself for hurting Pryor and letting his fear take over. Mm-hmm. And I think if we're living under the idea that justice is forgiveness, then I would say no one gets their real justice because they're all looking for it in a different place than where they can receive it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going with. Final answer.
What about the scene at the end, which is where the film version closes, where you have Hannah and you have Lewis and Belize and Pryor, I think 4 to 5 years after Pryor almost dies of AIDS.
Yeah, at the fountain.
At the fountain. Do you think that is a vision of justice? Have they come to a place of forgiveness in themselves?
I think so.
Why?
Because it's very peaceful. Up until that point, the general vibe of the book or the play is very anxious and very uncertain and very like, how are we going to solve these problems? And now it's years later, and we've all had time to think about it and to digest it and to understand what's happening, what's happened, and maybe have an idea of what's going to happen. This is the same kind of, I mean, not to bring it back to, first of all, I think it's hilarious that I'm talking a lot about COVID in this episode because when we first started recording this podcast, I specifically told guests not to talk about COVID.
Oh, wow.
Not because of like a touchy subject, because it was like
it was March 14th.
It was March 14th when we started recording this
wow.
for the first time. And I said, hey, don't say anything about this COVID thing because I don't know how long it's actually going to be a thing.
And March 15th, the world changed.
Yeah, it was a big deal. Anyway, so like it kind of gives me like, COVID vibes. The end of this book is like during the pandemic, during the early days, we were all scared. I remember being in my apartment on the west end of Providence and I could hear police on megaphones in the park on the other block saying, please disperse, the park is closed, return to your homes. You are not allowed to be here. You need to leave. And that's kind of how I feel like this whole book is. This whole book is the early in the AIDS epidemic, and no one knows what's going on, and everyone's scared and freaking out. But then the last scene is the calm of we went through it. We are on the other side. Things aren't better, not even close, but at least everything is a little bit more predictable, and we understand more than we did in the beginning. Yeah. Am I making sense here?
Yeah, you always make sense.
Like things aren't...
Really? Because I go like out of body a lot when I talk.
Me too, I understand, yeah. Things aren't...
Then you come back to yourself and you're like, oh.
Yeah, you're like, whoo! Yeah, like nothing's solved. Nothing's been put, like tidied up with a bow. But they're alive and they have chosen to live in the world with each other, knowing all that they now know. And there is, I think, a peace in that, maybe a relief. They're no longer carrying like the hatred in themselves and this towards themselves in the same way.
What it says in the play version, part of it is we won't die secret deaths anymore.
Yes.
And then Pryor says it, and it's, I bless you, more life, the great work begins. There's like another sentence between the two. But this idea of we won't die secret deaths anymore, and I think what is interesting is there are two plagues really happening in this play. There's the plague of AIDS and HIV, but there's also the plague of secrets and what that does to the characters. And this idea of like, we will not die secret deaths anymore, I think is very fascinating. And I think it does sort of lead into COVID a lot. I think that there was a lot of, not secret deaths, no one was like hidden, but there were definitely a lot of deaths that people didn't either know what was causing it or what was going on. And I think that is also a very fascinating thing.
This book rhymes with the world that we live in right now. And it is terrifying how well it rhymes.
Yeah.
George Lucas said that. He says, like, stories should rhyme. Like, that's what he says about Star Wars. Stories should rhyme. And that's why there are things that are similar throughout the entirety of all 3 acts of the Star Wars saga. And I think that we are currently in a rhyming part of history where there's something terrible happened before, and now we are all of an age that we didn't experience that part. Even though it happened probably right before we were born, now we're going through our own time of that. And when you look back at those things, you're like, oh man, maybe the world isn't as hopeless as I think it is, because it did get better for a long time, and now we're just back to that bad part again.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that came up for me when I was watching the show was, God, AIDS was terrifying. I mean, this was awful. And I think sometimes, like, I know that I can forget what horrors we have endured as human beings and still somehow manage to retain our humanity and our relationships in something of a faith and the collapsing of faith and the rebuilding of it. And there was something for me that I was like, wow, we are so amazing as human creatures that we keep insisting on more life and that God keeps giving it to us. Even though we face these horrors. And the rhyming with COVID reminded me of this poem by Ada Limon, and she was the poet laureate a couple years ago and wrote a collection called The Hurting Kind in response to the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. And so this collection was published in 2022. In it, there is a poem called The End of Poetry. The last part of it, I feel, really relates to this to the characters no longer accepting secret deaths, that they are going to witness each other rather than run from themselves and each other. And she says, I'm human, or the speaker says, I'm human. Enough, I am alone. I am desperate. Enough of the animal saving me. Enough of the high water. Enough sorrow. Enough of the air and its ease. I am asking you to touch me. This poem, knowing that it was born out of COVID time, where it felt, for periods of that time, irresponsible even to touch another human being. Irresponsible, if not impossible, to insist on, no, like we have to witness each other. We have to touch each other. We are born to be flesh to flesh, like bodied beings, even in the worst and most horrific of times. For me, rhymes with this story where these characters, who are in many ways the most at risk, the gay community, the queer community, the most at risk, are saying, more life. I will not live. I will not accept secret deaths. Like, I will touch you. And you see Belize and others, Joe even, with Roy, like bone to bone, flesh to flesh, like touching each other in the midst of death. Yeah, it rhymes with now, absolutely.
We haven't talked about Harper at all. And she's got a lot going on. I will say I'm not a huge Harper fan, so I don't have any specific questions about Harper, but I wanted to open the space if anyone else really felt like they needed to speak about Harper in any way.
I really enjoyed Harper's, like, I don't give a shit attitude in the theater.
Yes.
Like, that energy that she brought to feel like,
eating popcorn.
Fuck this. Like, this is all bullshit. I don't give a shit about what's going on right now.
Yeah.
That was great. I enjoyed the Harper parts, just because they were...
Yeah, they're fun.
They're fun, but it wasn't... I don't know, I guess maybe I'm just a dumb, but I just didn't get how... Like, I understood her arc of coming to terms with the fact that she, like, is Mormon and she married a gay man and she has to, like, live with that. I'm not sure if the story would be better without her, but I'm not...
I don't think it would be better
like,
without her.
Do we need her in this story?
I think she functions in a lot of plot device ways. I think she is one of the reasons that Hannah comes, and I think she helps facilitate Hannah staying. And I don't know if we get Joe in the same light. Because if he's just like a sad gay Mormon by himself, it's not as tragic as him, like, abandoning his equally sad wife. I think, like, structurally she functions in a lot of ways. I think she's interesting in her hallucinations with Pryor. I think her ending is fascinating. I don't think it's an ending I wanted for her.
I agree. It's an unsatisfactory ending, I think. I don't know. She's also a mirror for Joe.
Yeah.
And Joe's a mirror for her. And I think whatever love they have for each other does show up, it seems, in their honesty with each other. And I think that's why the pandemic of lies, or the epidemic of lies, is so painful. And I think at a certain point, Harper just decides that she's done with the lies. She's done with the lies in herself. She's done with the lies in Joe. And either there's going to be truth, or there will be nothing. There will be something else. There will be a different ending to this story, which ultimately I think her getting on the plane and going elsewhere is maybe that alternative ending. When I think about Harper, I think about that one moment in the story where she, like, drops her towel and she asks Joe to look at her, and she's like, what do you see? What do you see? She's totally naked. And he just says, nothing. I don't see anything. I see nothing at all. And that's a hard truth. It's a truth for Harper, and it's a truth for Joe. And in a way, it does liberate both of them. Like, their lives together, their life together starts to change after that moment. Like, it's an irreparable truth. You cannot go on as things were after something like that. And that's a gift, I think, a mercy to both of them. And I don't know if that would have happened if Harper wasn't there just saying the true things at a certain point. She does really reach a point, it seems. where she will not tolerate any more lies.
And then Joe does the same thing to Lewis on the beach.
Yes. To Lewis, he says a couple of things, but the one that stands out to me is he says, Lewis, you have to be in the world, not of it. Mm-hmm. In the world, not of it. That's I think the Mormon way or something. He says something like that. Mm-hmm. Because he was critiquing Lewis for wishing the world to be so much for the world to be other than it was, that he's no longer in it. He can no longer actually be alive. Mm-hmm. And that, of course, is Joe's journey, right? He was wishing so much that he could be other than he was, that he was not alive. Mm-hmm. Like he was not alive. And then he, vis-a-vis Harper and probably other things, cruising and whatever, wakes up. So, I don't know. I think Harper's important in her strangeness. I also love that she asks Joe how he prays. Like, how do you pray? Like, what does this mean to you? How do you pray? And I get that question all of the time. People, and the disciples ask that question. I mean, how do we pray? How do we pray? This is so mysterious. How do we pray? What do we think prayer is?
Well, if you must pray, you say the Our Father. Right? That's the answer. That's the answer. That's the...
You open the Book of Common Prayer and say any words in it. It reminds, and this is nothing, it kind of has something to do with it, but it reminds me, there's an article a couple years ago about laugh yoga that was being used as like therapy, or like laugh therapy.
Oh yeah, I remember this guy.
Yeah, laugh therapy?
Yeah, like not in a bad way. I'm not here to
Oh no, I'm not.
discredit
I'm just like, I remember this guy though.
Belly laughs heal people. I don't know.
No,
yeah.
Really, that's
but what he was saying was that like chemically in your brain when you laugh, it like releases something and all that kind of stuff. And I think there's lots of moments, when you have your adrenaline rush and you're feeling good or whatever it is, what that sort of means is that like prayer is really anything in which you feel connected, because if sin is the absence of God, then prayer would need to be the presence of God. Thank you. That was the word. Yeah.
Or like sin is the denial of the presence of God, and prayer is the acknowledgement of the presence of God.
Because I think like you can have prayerful moments anywhere. I've had prayerful moments in the theater, watching things. I've had it in church if there's a particularly great day. But I think what is interesting about prayer is people get fixated on the mechanics of it instead of the feeling of it.
And the essence of it. The thing underneath the thing.
Yes. Which is like kind of this whole book or play.
I think one of the better descriptions of prayer, the more believable descriptions of prayer that I've come across, is a pretty simple one, which is that prayer is an honest response to God, with or without words, which relates to what you were saying, Ivy, about prayer acknowledging God's presence and sin denying God's presence. And if that's true, then I think this play becomes more and more of a prayer as it goes.
Oh, I think it definitely is.
It becomes more and more honest. The characters become more and more honest in their responses to God and to the divine and each other as they go. And less afraid, I think, of the magnitude of sin. I think they start to believe that sin actually is not the most essential thing. Whether sin, or if we took the definition of sin to be anything that separates us from God and from God and each other, then in a way, any kind of epidemic has the capacity to become sin, the potential to become sin, because it drives separation. And the more and more that we yield to that as the most true thing, that, oh yes, separation, our separation from ourselves in all these knots of lies, our separation from each other in response to whatever it is we're terrified of in the world, and our separation from God in response to our shame about how we are separating ourselves from God and one another because we're afraid, then, I do think they become less and less afraid of sin as the play goes on. because they're less and less afraid. They become less and less captivated by or gullible to the idea that separation is our final form. And instead they're, in this essentially like this really interesting little queer community of discourse, discursive queer community at the fountain of baptism or whatever in New York City at the end. Less afraid and less alone.
We could definitely talk about this play for like another 4 hours. But is there any sort of things that people definitely want to make sure we talked about?
The octopus.
The octopus.
Why is Roy in his, reincarnation going to be an octopus?
I have no idea.
Tell me about the octopus.
Neither do I.
It's such an iconic last line.
Many hands, like he was always...
or he was always an octopus? Is that what he said?
No,
so.
He said
I will be an octopus?
He wants to come back as an octopus.
He wants to come back as an octopus.
Wait, let me get the line.
Welcome to Flipping Pages with Ivy Swinsky.
Why are you coming for me? I have had some great line comings for this. I don't know. But no, he says he wants
to be an octopus.
Oh, here it is. He kind of takes a nosedive. He pretends to be dead so that way he'll stop seeing Ethel. Yeah. And then Belize is like, oh, they're dead. And then he jumps up and is like, no, I'm not. I fooled you, Ethel. I win. I can't believe you fell for that Ma stuff. I just wanted to see if I could finally make Ethel Rosenberg sing. I win. And then he's like, next time around to Belize. Mm-hmm. What it's saying in the stage directions is he has like an aneurysm in his head. Mm-hmm. Next time around, I don't want to be a man. I want to be an octopus. Remember that? Okay. Hold. Because he pushed an imaginary button with his finger. And that's his last line.
I love it so much. I don't want to be a man. I want to be an octopus. Oh my gosh. Yes.
I haven't read it yet, but I've been told by so many people to read it. But the Remarkably Bright Creatures.
Who is it?
Never heard of it.
Okay. It's a book by Shelby Van Pelt. And it's about a widowed woman who works the night shift at an aquarium, forms a friendship with a Pacific octopus who helps her solve the mystery of her son's disappearance from decades earlier.
Well, octopi are actually very intelligent. I don't know
No,
if you've
that's
ever
the
seen
thing. No, like, and it's like supposed to be this like beautiful story.
My octopus teacher.
Yeah, my octopus teacher.
It's very moving.
have you guys seen Resident Alien?
No.
That's a really great show. Are
octopi alien in the show?
Yes. They are, and they're not
Roy
from here,
and
the alien that's on Earth can like telepathically talk. Like apparently, octopi are telepathic, and we just don't know because we're not telepathic. But like, if a telepathic alien shows up, like they can talk to the octopi.
I want the fox and the octopus.
Yes.
The fox from Fleabag and the octopus from Angels in America to have a conversation.
Move over, Walrus and the Carpenter. We're getting the octopus and the fox.
That's right. That's my screenplay.
Guys, we are gonna make a cartoon.
Oh man.
Nathan Lane as the octopus.
Oh my god. Did you watch like Seth Meyers' whole thing about the cicadas where he actually pitched a show about cicadas to Nathan Lane?
No.
Oh my gosh.
You should. It's like a running joke he does for like a year in his monologues.
That's
and then
phenomenal.
Nathan Lane talking about how he's gonna like write this play about cicadas because they only like come up every 20 years.
Yeah.
And then he like pitches the show to Nathan Lane. Because who else are you really gonna pitch that to? Like genuinely.
I think the octopus and the fox would take off. Gotta make it happen. Mm-hmm. To all you who are hearing this. I mean, if we're coming back in your renewed form, what would that form be?
Oh, I've actually thought about this.
Please tell us.
I think I would. I think I would kind of want to be like a cat.
Really?
I could see you being a cat.
Cats really got to figure it out because cats don't need anybody for anything.
Yeah.
And they trick humans into taking care of them. They just.
No, the cats are great. I've been told I am a cat. It's like, okay. But what about you? Do you have a...
I have always loved dolphins. When I was young, I used to collect various dolphin-related paraphernalia and items. And I love them because they're very playful and they sing and they're kind of gender bendy. And then Octavia Butler wrote a fantastic book that features dolphins in it. It's like Seed or something or the other. I can never remember exactly what it's called. But there's this phenomenal, like, time in the ocean where the protagonist is, like, swimming with the dolphins and feels connected to, like, their spirit and their power. And so I think I would like to be a dolphin. I would like to sing. I would like to, feel at home in the oceanic waters and still live in community, because dolphins are communal creatures and they don't have, right? Yeah, more or less. They have their own individuality, but also are communal. They play. And they also seem to not have any anxiety about being kind of amorphous in their gender and sexuality. So I think that's beautiful. I want to be a dolphin. It's my integrated self.
So long and thanks for the fish.
Yeah.
I like the dolphin. I don't know. I have not actually thought about this before. Like, I've said it in jest, but I've never actually, like, thought about what I would actually want to be. But I like this idea of water. I feel like maybe a stingray.
Oh, wow. I love it.
Like,
Ivy hates Steve Irwin.
No,
She's like,
no, but
yes.
I like the idea, like, when, like, I have done that thing where you, like, swim with stingrays.
Okay.
And they're, like, actually very gentle and chill. I know that he did.
Misunderstood.
But, like, they move very beautifully. And I think there's something I can be very high strung. So I think there's something very nice of, like, coming back as something that just sort of moves very gracefully and chill. And I do like that they can kind of protect themselves if they need to. Because, like, I'm not ending up in SeaWorld.
That's what that stingray said to Steve Irwin.
And maybe that's why Roy, in his next life, he's like, I don't need to be a man. I just want to be an octopus. I don't need all this, all this whatever, this stress. I've been fighting so hard. I've been doing my thing, been so successful in all these ways. But in the end, he's not a lawyer anymore because, yes, and that was so hard for him to accept. Oh, so, in the end, it's not a lawyer, it's not a man, it's an octopus.
Yeah. And I think what's most fascinating about the fact he's not a lawyer is he's not a lawyer because Joe said no to him.
Yes, Joe said no to him.
Which is...
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, Joe isn't all awful. Like, he has a lot of soul searching and therapy.
Oh, yeah.
In his future, but there's redeemable.
Oh, yeah.
qualities.
I think Joe is just finding himself through this book, through this
play.
He's just green. He's
just trying his best.
Yeah.
And I do think
that's relatable.
It also shows us something about religious trauma and how he was never given the option to not marry a woman and go be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And what that kind of means for him and how it manifests for him in a lot of ways. And what does being Mormon mean to him? Because I think he looks at religion more as like almost like a knight's code, like a moral code, versus like something you live and experience, which is how Hannah and Pryor interact with religion.
Yeah. Joe needs to go on his octopus journey.
Yeah.
Less man, more octopi. Or octopus. Yeah, I mean, I think he does relate to religion as like a moral and ethical code. And in some ways that even his maybe misapprehended relationship with religion does lead him to make some sound decisions, like not standing with Roy, for example, because he was against his morals. And good for him. I mean, that took some courage, and that was grounded in the belief system that he inherited, in the form that he inherited it. And he has some shedding to do and some restitching. I think, something that he says at a certain point to Harper, I believe, is when she's, trying to assist him in seeing himself more clearly and more compassionately. He says, I've worked so hard to be good, or to be a good man, or something like that. And you're threatening that, essentially.
Yeah.
And in the end, I think he has less anxiety around maintaining the facade of being a good man or feeling like being a good man is inexorably linked with being a good Mormon. Mm-hmm. That there's space actually to be messy and to be human and still be faithful. And he's young in that.
Yeah.
And moving freely in that revelation, but I think he's starting to understand it.
Yes.
That there's more space for his octopus nature. More space for the fox nature, yes. If we're talking Fleabag, in himself than he knew inside of his religious understanding.
Well, okay. If we wanted to see you in real life, how would one do that?
Well, if you would like to come see me in real life, I both live and work at Holy Trinity Episcopal Church in Tiverton, Rhode Island, 1956 Main Road. We're the stone church with the big red door right across from the Sakonnet River. And we would love to see you anytime, but especially for our services 5 p.m. Saturday night, 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. on Sunday. And certainly, if you ever just want to come and say hi, you can knock on my door or knock on the church's door, and eventually someone will come and greet you. And so we hope to see you there. If you want to check out our website, which is still in progress. In progress.
That's every Episcopal church's
website in progress.
St. Luke's website is on point.
That's because you run it.
I don't run it.
I just assumed you did.
Oh, if you want to take over my website, please. It's holytrinityepiscopalchurch.org, and my email address is revk@holytrinitychurch.org. So you can find us there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
I'm going there to see my father. I'm going there no more to roam. I'm only going over Jordan. I'm only going over home. I'm going there to see my Savior, to sing His praise forevermore. I'm only going over Jordan. I'm only going over home.
Thank you for listening to Tea Time Theology, a ministry of St. John's Cathedral in Rhode Island. We would like to thank our producers, Ivy Swinsky and Taylor Wilkie. Special thanks to Mariah Akande and David Hines for this season's music. Additionally, we would like to thank our sponsor, the Episcopal Diocese of Rhode Island, and the Right Reverend Nicholas Knisley, as well as our guests today. Follow us at Tea Time Theology on all social medias.